one. And everybody, welcome to another episode of ArmTalk. I'm your host, Jody Williams. And today, man, I couldn't express how much excitement I have with my guest today, Mr. Gregg Sharpe. Gregg, how you doing today?
Jody, I'm well. Thank you for having me on.
Well, good. So you have some very interesting news that you've been putting out, here and there, and it's caught everybody's attention in the arm wrestling community. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Well, I did save a lot on my insurance by switching. Well, maybe not. I haven't gotten Geico to sponsor us yet, so I can't say those words.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for me. I started this a few months back, I would say probably last summer, looking at how I could personally get involved in arm wrestling and hopefully create something that was organized in a way that could bring some different energy to maybe what arm wrestling was or was lacking maybe at the time. And I say that in a kind way because I don't think arm wrestling lacks in terms of the people that have the spirit to promote it. I think that each promoter out there, Jody, has really a kindness and a selflessness that they put forth to do these promotions. I just didn't see that we were moving in a direction that was expanding. And I guess what my thoughts were is that, I'd like to take a shot and see if I can do it in maybe a different manner that would or could create a little bit more revenue to the sport for everyone, a little bit more exposure for the sport for everyone. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about every arm wrestler, not just the super elite, but everybody. The guys like me, the guys that go out there and enjoy the tournaments and, have a great time. But, could there be a little bit more? And how do we take the young people that are kind of like me and growing in the sport, even though I'm older, and how do we get them to become on the elite level, not only as athletes and arm wrestlers, but also as ambassadors and marketing of the sport and their brands. And so that's kind of how it started. I decided that it was time to give it a shot. And, we fast forward 9-10 months later and now we're, less than 2 months away from our first event in Dallas.
And you know what? We appreciate the work and the groundwork you've put in and stuff like that. It seems like in this sport that there's always something monumental that happens to where it brings everybody in. So I think the last thing that was monumental in our sport was the game of arms, and it brought a lot of people in. So you figure that took place, in 2013, and it's hard to believe that was like 9 years ago. So you still got a lot of pullers out there who saw that and thought, hey, I'd love to get in this kind of sport. And that morphed into WAL, and that was around. Everybody got excited at that, and then it kind of took a hiatus or sabbatical, if you will. And rumblings are it may come back. We'll have to wait and see. Rumblings, about other networks filming some more arm wrestling and stuff like that. We'll have to wait and see. But I am excited that you have qualifiers in store. And can you tell you that will be the first one will be in Dallas, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we're going to do 4 qualifiers. We're going to go Dallas on the 16th of July. Then we're heading out to Kansas City for July 30th, followed up by the next week out in Virginia, which we moved because of filming with the docuseries with Travis. So we moved that to be closer to West Virginia. The Virginia location's 20 minutes outside of where we're going to be moving or taping the docuseries episode. And then the last one will be in LA, or what I'll call LA County.
Okay.
Jamie Sheldon and I are working on finalizing that location. So you'll have 4 qualifiers, and then the finals will be a kind of a 2-part series. We'll have a finals of all the qualifiers, left, right, amateur and women's. Now, we're only going to pay at this point, which could change, but we're paying at this point the right arm side. And I know that some people like that or don't like that. And that's, we have a methodology for that. But we're also going to run what I'll call a Best of the West tournament that same weekend. And what that really is, Jody, is we're hoping that the interest from these 4 regions and their qualifying friends will come out, because San Diego is a great place in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place in January. It's a great place in July. So we're hoping that people will come out, and then we'll have a tournament for all of those that are in the area that may not have taken the time or been able to be in a qualifier, but still came out to support, and have a great time behind that, and give a nice event leading up into the finals, and take both sides of that. So in essence, there's 6 parts to this developing series that's going on network stream. And ultimately after that, we're going to gear up for 2023, which is going to be even bigger. And I think when I unveil what we're about to do in 2023, I'm hoping that a lot of people will step back and say, wow, I didn't see this coming, but holy cow, I'm really excited about what this brings to the arm wrestling community as a whole.
Well, and then the thing is, I like to know, and probably everybody else wants to know, and I'm kind of treading lightly on these questions, because I know there's some things you can talk about and there's some things you cannot talk about. So I'm kind of like trying to be real careful about what I ask,
Sure.
What are your goals as far as the finale in San Diego? Like, what is your format going to look like as far as production, maybe, or just the tournament itself, or how do you see that unfolding?
Well, San Diego will be the how's the best way of saying, the culmination of all of the regional winners and qualifiers will have the opportunity to pull in the finals, right? And that's where our larger value of money comes into play. The 1,500 first place, 750 second, 500 third, 250 fourth, paid out 4 places in all weight classes. I think that's the value. And if you look at some of the older television productions of arm wrestling, and I like classics. I mean, I am a classical guy at 52, I guess. I don't want to say I'm a relic or an antique, but I think probably after 50, I am an antique in some sort of definition. But I always enjoyed the Yukon Jack tournaments and the ones on ABC Wild World of Sports. And I was always amazed that it was never able to continue on in the fashion that it had kind of set itself up for. And there's, going into the history of it, there's some real reasons. But certainly getting back to the exposure of consistent world championship arm wrestling is the goal. So I do like to keep a few of my cards close to the chest. And one of the things I always try to do on a business end is I like to under promise and over deliver. I never want to over promise and under deliver. So I will say that I think the experience of pulling in the finals on a taped to television event will be a great experience. We're going to learn through our first 4 regional events how to tweak it up until the finals to get the most out of that visual acuity, if you will, of the pullers. And what I mean is to be able to find those pullers that are going to be network worthy, to be able to be seen, to interview. And certainly all of those guys and girls who qualify will have a chance to be able to do some B-reel footage, so that way as they get to maybe the final 4, whittled down from the 12, there will be a lot more visual exposure on them, and kind of build it up with some backstory and such. So I envision a product that is going to set the tempo for the years to come. But like in anything, Jody, I think you have to work and learn through the the minutia of it first to be able to really fine tune the final product in that first year and years to come. So we're open, we're ready and open for the task. And I think what you will see when the actual show airs in January of 2023, which is when it will air. We're going to film all of this for the release in 2023. Once it releases, I think you're going to see a program that was well established, well shot, with great creative essence to it. We've already gotten quite a few musicians that have put their support behind us, have given us the opportunity to use their music that will bring a different level of feel to what we're going to put on TV. And then, we'll open up that future plan right as we start that airing of it in 2023 as to where 2023, 2024 is going to go and how we're going to. I don't know the word is exponentially because I think that's a misleading word, but I think that you'll see how we grow 3-4-fold over the course of year 2, 3, 4, and 5, which I really do believe will set the tempo for competitive arm wrestling in the U.S. going forward. Otherwise, I want to do it, Jody. I mean, people out there that throw just, their life, soul, and their efforts into just tournaments, that if it was just to run a simple tournament, it probably wouldn't be worth the extra efforts that we're putting into it, because I think enough people do the product well and deserve some kudos on that. I mean, certainly Leonard and Denise have been running USAA for a long time, and I love going to compete with them. You got Bill Collins that has run the UAL for a long time. He just had really 2 great events in one day. It kind of split the market for him out here on the West Coast, but he had the LA Fit Expo, and he had the Hawthorne event. Was it Hawthorne? It was.
Yes, it was the Kenny Bostwick Memorial in Hawthorne, Nevada. I was actually there. And the first thing I realized is that we didn't get the entries, the numbers that we got last year. And and I tell everybody every year that Hawthorne, it's a military town, so they it's a memorial they have every year in May. And I will say this though. It's in the middle of nowhere in Nevada. I'm telling you, when I mean nowhere in Nevada. But the array of talent that city brings in for the event, like it's always happened. It always happens the second to the last weekend of May, and rooms are booked because it's that serious. Now, you take consideration, last year is a who's who as far as who went to compete there. Now, we all know what happened this year. The reason why the events were split in half, because you have the LA Expo, which takes place in January. But at the time, the California mandate rules was like, no, we're going to shut it down. And you got to remember that it wasn't the actual tournament itself. It was actually LA Expo. And they pushed it back to, it just happened to be the same weekend as Hawthorne. And Bill Collins was like, okay, now I got 2 events on the same day in 2 different areas. So, Bill had his stuff here in Nevada. His son, Chris, did the event down in LA. So it went pretty good, but it also kind of split everything else in half. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that was the unfortunate thing of it, because, you said it exactly right. I mean, the LA Fit Expo, it kind of handcuffed Bill and Chris and the Collins family in the essence that they, when you sign in for those things, it's a package deal, meaning that you cannot say no if you want to keep going. And I believe they had some sponsor relationships with that they had pre-commitments with. But regardless, Bill and Chris use the Fit Expo series as one of their mainstays, which is, an advantage for them. I mean, they're always going to get a quality stage. They're always going to get a quality sound system. They're always going to have a quality crowd because of the value of a Fit Expo around it. You're always going to have curious people coming over, athletes. All of that feeds into their tournament. Just sadly, though, it was because of COVID. it kind of, disrupted the dates. And sometimes the best laid plans often go awry. And in this case, they made the most of it. I mean, Bill flew back in or drove back in from Hawthorne. I saw him on Sunday. I flew back in from Dallas from watching the TAL. And they did a great job. Let me tell you, the one thing that really impresses me about them is their consistency. And that's the actual reason why I hired the UAL to be the sanctioning body. Because certainly we could go to each area and find reps and kind of do it in a organic, homegrown way. But to be able to take the operational agita out of it and be able to say, we've got a quality system that we're not looking to recreate, and we have consistency so that not one regional qualifier would have the expression of being able to say, well, they did rules different in Kansas than they did in Virginia, than they did in LA, than they did in Dallas, and set up any kind of thought process that one side was easier than the other, or one had better value or less value. It keeps consistency across the board, and that's why we went with Bill and Chris. And I'll tell you what, I guess getting started was the first best decision I made. The second best was getting Bill and Chris involved, and then certainly, we've made really good, timely decisions there forward, which has kind of put us where we are.
Good. We got some people in the chat. Paul Stevens wants me to tell you, he said, what's up, by the way.
Paul is, let me tell you something about Paul, and I think it goes a long way with the quality of arm wrestlers in general out there. Paul has been a tremendous ambassador in San Diego for arm wrestling. He's one of these individuals that's been around the sport for a long time. Him and Alan Fisher have gone way back. I mean, Alan, I believe, taught Paul how to arm wrestle at some level early in his career, and Paul's been doing it for 20 plus years. But you can always go to an arm wrestling practice at Alan's house or at Dave DePue's Grinder Gym.
Yeah.
And you'll find Paul there, always willing to help, always willing to push. I think that's one of the really fun things about arm wrestling, and one of the things that goes not often said enough is that there's just some really quality people out there that really keep the sport going and support it and take the time out of the day. I mean, it's 2:18 in the afternoon, and I'm sure Paul is, engaging in whatever workload he has during the day, but he stepped out to be able to say hi and support your show and support me. I think that goes a long way, and I think it doesn't get noticed enough. And I really appreciate those who do jump on the lives and the YouTube streams, because without them, I mean, we're kind of voices that never get heard.
Yes, and like I said, awesome guy to have on your team. Another question came in the chat from Scott Evans. He wants to know, and like I said, because of production and television, only some things can be said. So he would like to know, what is Travis Bajan's part in this? I know he's mentioned on this podcast about he's linked up and he's ready to do some work and that kind of stuff. But it was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek situation. What can you tell us about what his role is as far as his production goes?
I think it's a good question. It's certainly something we could talk about. Now, Travis and I have known each other, I want to say, for the last 6 or 7 years, since I think we kind of officially met. But I always talk, in general terms. I met Travis probably 15 to 17 years ago at a Mr. Olympia in Vegas, where he was repping Sly Stallone's nutritional products. And he was sitting at a back table, eating some lunch. I was walking by with my son, who's 22 now. And I just recognized him from a small documentary that I saw on public television when I was up in upstate New York, when I lived in Syracuse. And I said, man, you're Travis Bajan, you're the left-handed puller. And he was at the time recognized as a world champion. And he said, yeah. And I go, oh man, I saw you on such and such, such and such. I sat down and chatted with him for a good 10 minutes. Nicest guy that you'll ever meet. Extremely charismatic. And I was impressed at that time. I actually got a picture of him signed with Sly Stallone's product. Fast forward, and I got involved in arm wrestling in 2000, maybe 15, 16.
Yeah.
And I met him at the first event, and we talked a little bit. And you know how that is when you meet somebody for the first time. You don't really get to know them until you meet them several times. And, we became better friends, and we had a lot of commonality in our lives because both of our sons play football. And, we chatted quite a bit and became friends outside of arm wrestling, which was terrific. Fast forward to today, when I got involved with the arm wrestling, we didn't quite have the distribution deal in place. And I think that's one of the reasons why I never mentioned anything early, is because certainly you go back to the under promise, over deliver. Once we put the distribution in place, and with my partner now, we can actually place product directly. We don't have to worry about middle people to get the product to the networks, which is a huge advantage to us. I reached out to Travis, who talked to me at the time, maybe 3 years ago, about a project. I said, "Hey, you remember that project that you talked to me about?" And he goes, I like to do my Travis. And he goes, "Absolutely." And we started talking about it. And in putting it together, we realized and recognized that there were some real simple advantages by bringing him on as the host of the show, Locked and Loaded. But as a host, he is more of the color commentating of the project. We're still yet to announce a host, which we've had some conversations, Jody, about. But the first thing was bringing his massive personality into the project on the Locked and Loaded end. Was an easy call for me. So Travis will be at every one of the regionals.
Yeah.
As a color commentator for the project. We also have the Tell Me I'm the Greatest docuseries, in which, without giving away any plot lines, storylines, or what it's about, it is a docuseries that is based upon Travis and some real life experiences that I think will be extremely fun to see. It will blend in with the Locked and Loaded show. However, they will both be stand on their own shows. So we'll be filming on each weekend for the Locked and Loaded event, and we'll be filming each weekend for the Tell Me I'm the Greatest event. So each weekend there will be a multiple levels of on-set going on. So Travis is deeply involved. He is a passionate individual. He has some creative control. And I say some because I think that anything that we put out there has to have a level of quality control that comes back from the network that says this would work or that doesn't work. But I will tell you, Travis is one of the most creative people that you'll ever meet. And he's got some terrific ideas. And a lot of times it's just really trying to keep up with all those ideas and then take them in the back of my mind and say, can we actually do this, and how did we make that work? But I'm going to also tell you something, Jody. Bringing somebody with Travis onto the table brings a lot of intangibles to the table too, because here's a gentleman that has traveled around the country for 30 years arm wrestling.
Oh yeah.
So there's a wealth of experience that comes with bringing someone on like that, and we take that in a very high regard. And I think that anything less than we're extremely happy and humbled that we were able to put some relationships together with him. That even may be an understatement on several levels, but certainly we're super happy to have him involved.
Well, good. And here's the thing, when you talk about production in our sport, we've seen things come and go. So I'll give you a couple examples. So we've seen there was a pilot that UAL had, right? And it's still out there. If you just type up in YouTube, UAL pilot, it'll pop up. That didn't come to fruition. That kind of went away. Then you had Game of Arms, which I think, would still be going on right now had it not been on AMC. Now, granted, year one, it blew up. Problem was AMC decided to get rid of all their reality TV shows, and the show was already midway through season number 2 before AMC pulled the plug. And I wish there was some lost footage of that. That would have been cool to see. But you're looking for a different network, okay? And then you got Arm Wars, the way they product things with Neil Pickup. Now his original Arm Wars now is in the Arm Wars archives, because now they took a hiatus and now they resurfaced, and now the new and improved version is what they're doing now. So anytime you have a production in television and it relates to arm wrestling, I got to sit back and go, okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Gregg Sharpe, do you take bits and pieces of that and then kind of go, okay, I'm going to mix it to my own recipe? Or do you sit there and kind of watch and see, okay, well, this didn't work because of this worked because of that? What's your response to that question?
I think it's a great question, Jody. I think anytime you are in business, there's several elements of business that you have to look at and consider. Okay, so if you want to sell tennis shoes as a tennis shoes salesperson, and there's 20 tennis shoe salespeople around you, some successful, some not, you look at each one in their own light and say, why is this guy or this girl more successful than this guy or this girl? And you try to take those lessons and understand that in conjunction with the timing of everything, right? So I think that's the first thing you have to do in business. And then the second thing you have to do in business is create some uniqueness. I think that the level of uniqueness also can set yourself apart. Now, I don't know Neil Pickup. I think Neil Pickup is a tremendous voice and a great analyst. I mean, if anybody that's ever watched WAL or his Arm Wars, and you listen to his commentating, it's infectious and you're drawn in, and it's fun to listen to because he's like I would compare him to the Howard Stern of arm wrestling on his commentating end, because you're almost as interested in what he's going to say next as what the results are on the arm wrestling table. And I've laughed hysterically on some of the things that he's delivered on such a time basis in perfect unity with the show that he makes it work. So, you look at Neil and you say, he's one of those guys that do it right. Now, why do these shows a lot of times disintegrate? And that's where you start dissecting the good and the bad. And I think they dissect, Jody, for a couple of reasons. When you're dealing with networks, you're dealing with viewers. Okay. Mm-hmm. I want to say the Game of Arms maxed out at 500,000 viewers right. at the peak of its first season. Now, on a streaming side, as an AVOD side, of that's terrific numbers. But when you're looking at network numbers, those numbers don't translate out to longevity. So whether or not AMC was bringing back their, rowdy, shows or not, as a reason, I don't know that to be true or false. And again, I only can tell you the data that I've heard on the views with the Game of Arms, and it's third party, right? So, I was told that and when we started doing homework as to where to take this, that was the number that these guys were getting, which again, 500,000 views, unique views is a lot of people watching a show.
Right.
But in the world of network, if you're not in the millions, then it's not rating, and the networks look to take that and find better content to get their commercial product to, in front of the viewers. Because at the end of the day, the commercials on any TV show sell the TV show, right?
Right.
So if I have, my partner likes to say Charmin toilet paper, because most of the time, whenever somebody calls me and it's really important, I find myself old age driven in the number 2 stage. So the Charmin toilet paper analogy is, if I can spend $1,000 to get a 500,000 viewers, or I could spend $1,000 to get 4 million viewers. I'm going to spend it on the $4 million product, right?
Yeah.
So now we kind of fast forward with all of these lessons learned and why things imploded and why things exploded to begin with and imploded in the end. I think the main thing that we've tried to get away from is we hold our own content destiny, meaning that when we place it, we're placing it as distribution licensed people, and that takes the middleman, that the judgment zone out of it, and we're putting it on a platform that we can continue to grow and move upward and mushroom out on it. And I think that's important. Instead of having the platform in which if you're not at the right level, you're done, and that brings you back to zero. So again, the under promise, over deliver scenario on the network end is where we're driving this. And then I think that bringing some uniqueness to our weight classes kind of sets us apart.
Right.
So how do we set ourselves apart? How do we fix the things that haven't been consistently, available for arm wrestling? Were our two major things. And the setting apart with 4 weight classes, for me, made more sense when it came to network TV viewing, because it gives it condenses things to a point where it's more number driven versus maybe the convoluted 6-7 weight classes, as well as it gives a product that is easy to tabulate and quantify with, meaning that we could call it lightweight, middleweight, cruiserweight, and heavyweight if we wanted to, right? We could call it, but they're really identifiable sections of athletic performance instead of going through the under 54, 54 to 76, the 76, having 6-7 weight classes on a competitive end might bring a better maybe the extra 5 or 6 pullers to the table, a better span of distribution. But on a network end, I didn't think it would work. So we wanted to get a product that we thought would work, and that's why we came up with that. So drawing that long-winded answer to you, I think we've learned from a lot of these shows what works to put it on the platforms that have the longest lifespan possible, with a uniqueness that will hopefully set us apart, but not in a bad way, in a way that's functionally valuable to not only the arm wrestler, most importantly, but also to the end user, who is the viewer, that will keep them interested.
Well, I have a theory, and it's a theory for you to answer and everybody in the chat to answer. So bear with me. And okay. I thought about this for a while, the last year or so. When you have something like the Game of Arms, we were at the mercy of AMC, which means they want to pull the plug, they're going to pull the plug, right? And you look at WAL when it was on ESPN, and they say, hey, we're going to give you 60-minute time slot, see how much you can cram into there, but ESPN's a big thing, big network, huge network. AMC's a big network. And I wonder, for our sport, which is not as huge as I think it should be, because let's be real, when you have slap boxing at the Arnold Classic getting all these views, it blows my mind. But that's neither here nor there. My question or my theory would be, and I want everybody to respond to this. I think now things like Netflix, Hulu, things like that, maybe HBO Max, like I can go downstairs in my garage right now where all my workout stuff is, and I'm looking up stuff on Hulu and stuff. What if, I think that might be the future. And I could be, totally out in left field when I say that. But, what do you think to get our sport going to where, it's real exciting and all of a sudden someone pulls the plug and now we're back to square one, or sometimes more oftentimes than not, we're square -1, where, well, if we got on Hulu, everybody watches Hulu. Everybody watches Netflix. Is there a way, some way, somehow that our sport can get on something like that? That way we don't have to worry about the bigger markets, the huge markets, pulling the plug on this. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if you're reading behind the scenes at Locked and Loaded, but we are going to be on those platforms. So the answer to your question is I think you're right on the money. Again, it goes to under promise and over deliver.
Right.
When you hold now you have to understand that these platforms are owned by network TVs. Okay, Fox owns Tubi TV, Hulu, I believe a part of Peacock. NBC owns Peacock, I think, at Paramount. There's a bunch of different networks that own these sources, and this is really the future of network TV because you can stream it, you can see it on your big screen TV, you can see it on your phone. Like, you can find this everywhere. So the best way to describe the values that it brings is that you can control your own destiny, but the problem that most people have is that they don't have a direct connection. And I can tell you this, Jody, from being in the world of production for the last 10 years, off and on with different shows, we ran 100 Explode Fight Series events over the course of 6 years. Amateur, pro, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing. The one equation that I never was able to figure out until I came into partnership was, how do I get through the 3 layers of, I know a guy who knows a guy that knows a lady who can get us there.
Right.
Right. And that's where I think that these products have a disadvantage that we're hoping to open up as well. And again, that world of 2023, 2024, I think we're going to show you a game plan that's, people are just going to sit back and say, man, I'm just amazed. But you're right. It's you cannot go after, what's the old saying, Jody, is stay in your lane, right?
Yeah.
It would be great if we all could, drop it into 5th gear and hit the gas and be at 120 miles per hour with NBC, CBS, ABC, or Fox on a Monday night at 8 o'clock in front of 15 million people. But the answer is that it's just not going to happen. And I don't know that our sport is compelling enough in terms of overall viewer enthusiasm outside of our own athletic enthusiasm. So we're probably in gear 2. We're maybe on the second lane to the right. We're certainly not in the slowest lane. But we want to, if it's a 5-lane highway, we want to get to the left into the fast lane. But just like on a highway, you have to kind of build up your speed, and you find your next turn into traffic, and you're going 1 lane at a time, because if you don't, there's a good chance when you swerve across into lane 5, you're going to get hit, and you're going to find yourself in the middle of the ditch, and you're out of the game completely.
Exactly.
So I get very intuitive with it, Jody, and I think when you see where we're going to land, we have those direct relationships. And listen, here's the other thing, guys. For those of you listening out there, come to me. I mean, I'm not here to even though I hold cards that maybe some people can't right now, that doesn't mean that I don't want to create winning relationships with others. I mean, I'm not here to monopolize the world of arm wrestling, because it would be foolish to think that way. I think there's enough people that truly delusion themselves that they are going to just rule the world of arm wrestling. I'm here to make it better. By 10 years from now, I'm hoping that the Jody Williams of the world and the Paul Stevens of the world, and the guys that are the stalwarts and promoted through their channels and promoted through their entries, they're going to say, man, Gregg was able to help move the sport in a direction that we needed at the time, and maybe others weren't able to, in a way that it was helpful for everyone.
Yes.
And that's how I see it. I don't want it to be, it's competitive to get a great product, but it's not, what's the word I want to use? Argumentative, that I'm going to, try to keep others from doing what they want to do. I want to be inclusive, I don't want to be exclusive in this.
I look at arm wrestling and organizations and leagues as something as a grocery store. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but just hear me out for a second. Because every check stand, which is, hey, Arm Wars, King of the Table, East versus West, your production coming up. I guess if you want to throw in, W, you can, Wall, right? Or even, IFA and WAF, if you will. I think all those organizations have something to offer for everyone. And what I mean by that, and this is where the grocery store theory comes into play, right? It's a Saturday afternoon. We all know the majority of the world is not working Saturday afternoon. They're like, hey, I got to get my groceries done. So you got 8 check stands, right? Every check stand is different. You're going to have that one check stand where it's like, okay, you're going to have, hey, mega groceries, sometimes even 2 carts. You got another check stand. Hey, 15 items or less. You're going to, somebody will go in that check stand. Or you got the self-check line, right? So what I'm saying is that it offers something for everybody, because if it was just one check stand, it takes forever. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. Whereas, hey, maybe, and we'll use like Arm Wars for a second. Arm Wars, once you get a taste of that, which I haven't yet, once you get a taste of that, you want to go back. Well, Arm Wars is going to reach out to a certain group of people. Fine, no big deal. You got the PAL or IFA, whatever. They're going to reach a certain amount of people over there. They like the strict rules, that kind of stuff. You're going to, maybe if Wall comes back, you're going to people there because they like the fact that, hey, if I bunny hop, hey, the rules are not as strict. They're a little bit loose. You got that. You have the elites that we all know of. They go to the King of the Table across the pond. They go to the East versus West across the pond. And it offers something for everybody. And this is what I like. And so if people, promoters, directors, what have you, if they all realize going, hey, we all have something to offer, some way, somehow, somebody's going to like my product, And I think that, it shouldn't be so much of a competition. I think sometimes we get caught up into that. And I understand that, more oftentimes than not, you're going to have people having events on the same day. Case in point, last weekend, what happened? We had the one in Texas, right? You had the one in Hawthorne. You had the one in LA. So, yeah, from the central time zone over to the west, you had 3 mega events that pulled a lot of people away, And I get that, but at the same time, we're growing our sport, because not everybody can afford to go to one place, because if we did, then guess what? All the hotels would be sold out, and then somebody is on the outside looking in. But, and I might be blabbing off, but that's how I look at this sport. It has something to offer for everybody. That's why I use the grocery store check stand theory.
And I think it's appropriate, Jody. You look at your analogy, and I think it kind of is case in point. Is that you may even be able to expand on that grocery store. If you're here in San Diego, you have Albertsons, Vons and Ralph's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are your main 3. But if you go out to Syracuse, New York, you have Wegmans, Tops, and Super Save. You go down to Texas, you have they probably have 3 different brands down there, but every area has their own supermarket, and you have your family grocery stores that are inherently the IGAs, Independent Grocery Association.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. So those were the mom and pop grocery stores, So when you look at this as a whole, you have to have all of those to be able to feed everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So without a grocery store, the IGAs, the mom and pop, the market store in the middle of, the Nebraska that, is 20 miles, closer than a major store that, the family has to go to get their staples, every other week, because they can't make a trip into the big city. You have to have those. And in arm wrestling, those smaller events are those mom and pop markets.
Yeah.
But I think what helps the mom and pop markets is if we give back as the larger entities to them to support them. It's important that happens too. And one of the things, Jody, I think that the analogy is kind of short on, if you wanted to expand a little bit, is that the mom and pop has to get some sponsorship back. And one of the things we're doing with Locked and Loaded is every area that we're going into, that we're working with, a percentage of that revenue above our hard cost is going back to that area, so that those mom and pop tournaments have better prize money, have maybe more T-shirts, have better awards. We're not just coming in and draining that area.
Right.
What we're doing is we're seeding that area. We want to seed and grow the individual, leagues, so that they can develop and bring a better product across the board. So we have to help. And I don't know as a whole if some of these other entities didn't lose track of that when they got started. And maybe is some of the reason they didn't catch on fire as they really wanted to and had the longevity that they did, because maybe growing the lower organizations to grow into their successors or their developers has been something on the wayside, and that's something that we're looking to do. And maybe that will be one of those unique positions that we hold that others will follow suit with, because wouldn't it be great if a WAL or an Arm Wars or whatever organization is out there comes into your area and runs an event and has a great event and leaves $1,500 in the organization that they ran the event, to be able to go out and support 3 or 5 more of their events locally, so that the following year they're even stronger.
Yeah, it's like the Olympics, when your city hosts the Olympics, and we'll use LA and Atlanta, for example. 84 Olympics in LA, of course, 32. And then you got the 96 Olympics in Atlanta. Well, when Olympics come, there's so much revenue for that city. Now granted, you got to supply all the supply and demand, hotel accommodations, venues or what have you. But when they come, then it jump starts that whole community. So yeah, I kind of see it that way. Well, hey, we come to your town. Because, let's be real, when Wall came to like Baltimore, that was cool. But then they also went to, I want to say they went to Virginia. They went to Tulsa, Oklahoma one year. So, I get they go to those towns and everybody's flying there, So, I do see where you're going with that,
Right. But I think that's important. Again, it's almost like, there's so many great analogies and life lessons that you could put into any bit, but when you really want to make a positive change in anything in life, you don't look to change the older, mature value of it. You look to change it from the youngest value up, so that those values grow into it and are almost hereditary for the future, then try to change the opinions of the mature or older era, if you will, that may or may not feel as if they want to change. So you have to change from the bottom and move up through. And I think that's what we need to do it.
Hey, Greg, you're starting to break up a little bit. You're starting to break up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. Now it's better. That's better.
Okay. I haven't moved my phone. I think I moved my head about 6 inches. You would think that in the world of San Diego or any major city in the U.S., you would be able to get this cell phone connection. But
I know,
unfortunately,
right?
if I move my head or phone an inch either way, I lose it in my office.
I get it.
So, but I think, again, the biggest thing is we really want to help grow it, and I hope that will be part of our uniqueness.
That's right. And like I said, I'm so excited when I see projects like this, come to the forefront, because once again, it gives everyone an opportunity, right? Because I'll use myself, and I'm only speaking for me, everybody in the chat, and Gregg, I'm only going to say this for me, because I'm a realist. Now, am I an elite puller? No. So you'll never probably see me get on a card of, King of the Table or, East versus West. That's for the guys who are on elite level. I am not there. I realize that and I know that. However, not to take Travis's word, but, then again, you have other options. And those other options may fit you. This is why I like that. And I think the problem I see is that anytime somebody comes out with this, there's always, half are excited, but they don't have to like going, okay, we'll see how long this lasts. I'm like, no. We got to look at the glass half full and not so much half empty. You know what I mean? So people need to realize that. And I look at it like going, okay, cool. What if I want to, so when somebody asks me, hey, Jody, what's your, goals in this sport? What do you want to accomplish? And I tell them straight up, I'm not an elite puller. But I tell you what, though, there's a part of me that wants to compete and win a Masters world title or a Masters national title. That's I'm 46 years old. 46 years old. And, I've been in this sport 12 years, right? I got this podcast show I'm doing right now. And I'm a co-host on another podcast show, by the way. I do play-by-play at certain events. So I got a lot going for me. There's always options for me in this sport. But I got some bucket list tournaments I want to hit up. I would love to be on Arm Wars one of these days. Would love it. I would love to be, to get a taste of that WAL, or maybe get a taste of what you're putting out there, because it's going to reach out to somebody, some way, somehow, whoever out there, promoter, director, film, whatever you want to call that, it's going to reach out to somebody and they're going to say, I like that. I want that guy or I want that girl. And on the flip side, as the athlete, you're going to go, man, that relates to me. I want to give it a shot and see what happens. And that's what we need to focus on and not be so short-minded and be upset because somebody else is doing something because they feel like, oh, well, if it's something new and appealing, they're going to take away the people that want to come to my events or my establishment. And I think people need to realize that there's a lot more people out there we just don't know about because all we're accustomed to, for the most part, are the household names. There's more to the sport than just the Dave Chafees and Michael Todd and Devin Larris of the world. Trust me when I say that, but that's all we like to see because that's all that's been on TV. Shine some light on some of the people. There's some badass arm wrestlers out there, but they don't get the recognition they deserve because we're always outshined by the elites. Now I'm talking about guys like Jason Merlot. I'm talking about Mika, Ole Mazzoi. List goes on and on. Put those guys to the forefront and let them establish themselves. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot more talent, untapped talent, if you may, that's out there that a lot of people don't know about unless it's a local thing. That's just my soapbox. Sorry about that, Gregg.
Well, I agree with you. It's interesting. You bring up some great names. Certainly, you brought up Mika's name, which I thought was, many years ago, Lori Cole, who's what we would call an OG of the sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was in LA cheering Mika on. I didn't realize he was a tennis pro.
Yeah.
What a great story that is. I mean, there's how many people would think that a tennis pro who, would take up a sport of arm wrestling and start becoming a more dominant regional pro, and maybe is getting further along than just dominant regional pro, but has really taken a completely different type of sport and changed it into a strength. I mean, of course, if you're gripping it all day long, your hand strength has got to be there, but I think that, the movement of your arms and your rotator cuff and most tennis players are lean up top and thick in the quads and the calves because they're moving all day long. But what a tremendous story that could be, and certainly one that's worth taking a look at.
Yeah.
You look at a guy named BJ Fakakis, who was a baseball pitcher.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's so many great underlying stories out there, like yourself and the amazing love that you had for your son and changed it into an organization that has given back to so many others through him. There are just some really great people and I don't think people realize that. And I'm hoping that Locked and Loaded brings a lot of that to the forefront too, because the Dave Champions of the world are just amazing. I mean, the Michael Todds, Travis Bajents, the Devin Loretts, the John Brzenks, the Todd Hutchins, those guys that, are folklore, that are still pulling, have reached the highest levels. They're just amazing to be around and watch compete, because they're at just this awe-dropping level. But, there are people that have awe-dropping lives that would be just as compelling.
Yeah.
And we're trying to focus uniquely on that as well. Certainly would I love to have Michael Todd come and pull and win it all? Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to have Michael Todd or Devin Moran or any of those guys come in and take the crown, right? But what are really those chances that they're going to want to put in the time or the energy when they can go to a East versus West or a king of the table that's going to potentially give them a lot more exposure in their community of arm wrestling, because they, you look at these events and they really cater to the community of arm wrestling versus the community in itself. But they're going to get more. They're going to get more bang for their buck. And we're not catering in our approach to the community of arm wrestling uniquely. We want to cater to the community of viewership, which is one of the reasons why we really think that this will have more appeal. And having that average person that does their 9 to 5 and has a family, has the grind and the experiences that everyone can relate to, is oftentimes more compelling than the guy who's just so super strong that that nobody can touch him.
Right.
So you have a good point to all of that, Jody, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone gets their fair share. Because I mean, there's one big pie, and everybody wants a slice, or or they want the end piece of the cake, or whatever the case may be. I just want, if you want, I love this sport up and down, and I'm glad that I was able to be in some situations where I get to experiment more than just the competition on the table. I'm glad I got to able to do that, and I've done fairly well. And I'm hoping those opportunities will come again, down the road and stuff like that. So I just want, basically, I want everybody to say this sport is so good. We need to make it better than just, like I said, I don't know. When I see slap boxing get all the publicity, it blows my mind, because there is no way I'm gonna let some grown man slap me. I'm supposed to let that happen. That's what everybody likes, though. And I'm like going, are we kidding me? I mean, some of the stuff I see in the Olympics is like, why in the world are we not there? We should be there. But, baby steps, right? Baby steps. Maybe we have to go in a different, direction for us to get ourselves out there. Because some way, somehow, it's going to catch somebody's eye. And just like yourself, you've taken it to a different direction where it's caught someone's eye. So now all we got to do is just, make good on it, and everything else, let the pieces fall where they may. You know what I mean?
Agreed. I mean, the road not taken, right? Robert Frost. The two roads diverge in the woods, and you take the one less trodden by, and that made all the difference. And we're kind of hoping that that's the case.
That's right. Well, Greg, I don't mean to hold you up too long. We've been on it for almost an hour and stuff, and my wife will be coming home soon, and we're going to go out to have dinner pretty soon. But I want to thank you very much for joining me on the show today, because the information you had for everybody on the chat, I think was very informative, and I appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing how this whole thing unfolds, and it starts on Dallas, Texas. You said July 16th?
July 16th in Dallas, Texas.
There you go. So everybody in the Midwest or the Southwest, if you may, make your plans, because this will be the first leg. And I'm telling you right now, from what I hear, from what I see, it's going to be awesome. So everybody, stay tuned. My friend, thank you very much for joining me. And yes, you and I will keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm really honored that you had me on. And anytime you need somebody to chat with, just reach out to me. I'll pick up the phone, and I'd love to talk to you again.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Have a good day.
You too, Jody. Thank you, sir.
Take care. All right, guys, we are 3 o'clock West Coast time. Okay, all you guys on the East Coast are probably getting ready for dinner. That's fine. But yeah, Gregg Sharpe got awesome things coming up. He said he's got some events coming up. The first one's going to kick off July 16th, Dallas, Texas. Okay, it's gonna culminate San Diego, California, the finals, right? Okay. Yes, we have to be good to one another. I don't think directors should be upset. You know, there's so many arm wrestlers out there. Not everybody can travel all the time. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, gas prices are what now? So there's that. But I get it. Now don't get me wrong. There are guys out there who paved the way for guys like Brzezinski, Hutchings, Todd. List goes on, right? And those guys that we all watch when we're on our practice tables or whatever, at least I do on Saturday mornings. I'm watching those big events across the pond. They're paving the way for us, which in return, maybe 7, 8 years down the road, we are paving the road for the ones who are about to come into the sport. You know what I mean? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what I'm saying. So again, thank you everybody for joining me on the show. It was very informative. I will go ahead and post this bad boy. So in case you missed the show, you can listen to the whole thing. As always, guys and girls, see ya when I see ya. You guys be good to each other.